Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. This is Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents episode number 63. And I am Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and joining me pretty much every episode in the, 2 years we've been doing this now, Brian, is Mr. Brian Smith himself.
Hey, Eric, how's it going?
It's going well. It was pointed out in an earlier event that I seem to have lost something.
Yeah, you look a little different. Can't quite place it.
Yeah, there's something different. Of course, this on the heels of the last episode where I think a couple of us were teasing you for your hairstyle.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
It has been a topic of conversation every meeting and live stream I've been a part of this week. So we got it out of the way. We're not here to talk about hairstyles. We are, in fact, here to talk about Red Hat Enterprise Linux and talking about how to get certified. So we'll talk about the RACSA, the RACE, what the exams are like, some tips and tricks. We've got a full show today. Really excited about it, but we couldn't do that without a couple of guests. And so let me bring in Mr. Randy Russell and Henry Maine. Randy, you are not a stranger to the RHEL YouTube channel, so let's start with you. How about you introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do here at Red Hat, and then maybe something that you do for fun.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Sure.
So I'm Randy Russell. I'm the director of certification at Red Hat, which means that I oversee the professional certification program. And I always want to clarify that because we certify a lot of things. We certify products. We certify hardware. All of that is in other capable hands. I'm in the business of certifying people, that they have skills and knowledge in using our technology. And so what do I do for fun? I do a lot of ill-advised things that end up with scrapes, scratches, and occasional other injuries, like snowboarding, one-wheeling, mountain biking, and I don't do it as much, but motorcycling, which I have done on occasion with your other guest. See what I did there?
That was a beautiful transition. Mr. Henry Maine, welcome to RHEL Presents. Same question.
Hi, folks. So yes, my name is Henry Maine, and I work for Mr. Russell. I manage the team of developers that develop a large portion of the certification exams that we deliver, including the RHCE exam and a number of our OpenShift products. As far as what I do for fun, well, as Randy said, I also am a motorcyclist, and we have taken a couple of trips together. We went on, as he called it, a program endangerment run a number of years ago, where we had a large percentage of the folks involved with doing certification exams out on motorcycles. Other things I do, I occasionally indulge in amateur car racing. I'm part of, I participate in something called the 24 Hours of Lemons. I encourage you to look it up. It's some of the videos are very entertaining to watch, other than that, I think those are probably the two chief things I do for entertainment. And then other than that, it's sort of boring. Just reading and things of that nature.
Now, I take a bit of offense to that. Although I am a former motorcyclist that disappeared with when my kids arrived on the scene, but one of my favorite hobbies is to sit and read.
I should say it's not boring. No, it's actually enjoyable.
So as today's episode is going to be very, very detailed in the certification realm, I encourage you to go ahead and hit that like button. We hope to promote this episode far and wide, so hit the like button and make sure to share with a friend. That being said, Randy, I'll throw this one to you to kick us off. Why should I bother getting certified? What benefit is there to taking exams, spending all that time studying? Does it help me in any way?
Well, yes, it does. So, I'm gonna actually abstract it just a little bit more and say, what is the point of having a certification program? Who is it going to benefit, and why would it? And I'm going to work towards how would it benefit you? And so, technology requires skills and knowledge. We always hope and aspire to have technology that is so easy to use that you just don't need to know anything, but you always need to know something. And even if it's simple to use, it always gets combined with other things in complex ways. And so skills and knowledge and technology are inextricably tied together, right? If you are an organization, a company, nonprofit, whatever, and you have IT, you have technology upon which you rely, you are going to rely on people who are going to be responsible for that technology. And if you want to get good results, good business results, good outcomes, you want those people to actually know what they're doing. You want them to be effective. But at the same time, you as somebody maybe up the management chain, somebody making other kinds of business decisions, you might not have a clear sense of what it means to know what you're doing, right? Even if you're hands-on, you need an efficient way to get at whether people know what they're doing. Well, that's the key to certification. And so now, coming back to your original question, what's the benefit for getting certified? It's that you get to put that gold star on your chest and say, hey, I know what I'm doing. Red Hat says I know what I'm doing. And that's really what it comes down to, is being able to have that degree of certainty to somebody else, to present yourself to others in this way that says, look, I know what I'm doing.
So along these same lines, Randy, we had a question asking about, are there any benefits if you're an employer to having, staff, that is Red Hat certified?
There's incredible benefits, actually, and you don't have to take my word for it, because I'm going to say that regardless. You can actually, we have done a series of, actually commissioned a series of IDC studies that have found, in fact, in very specific kinds of ways, just how beneficial it is for our customers to have Red Hat certified staff on board. You see this in terms of ROI, you see this in terms of uptime, you see this in time to resolution for issues, all of these different kinds of metrics that should matter to an organization. We really have found that it does make a difference. It is in the company's interest to have people who have this level of skill and to benchmark it. And I think even if you have some people who are not so benchmarked, they sort of have the example of the people who are benchmarked to say, okay, I need to get to that level. And so, yeah, there is absolutely an organizational benefit.
Well, and to your point, Randy, about individuals, I know that when I got my first RHCSA back on like RHEL 6, I think it was, it really was the turning point in my Linux administration career. It was a milestone where I said, you know what? I know enough about what I'm doing that I need to set aside the imposter syndrome. I need to stop second guessing myself, because Red Hat seems to think that I know enough about managing their operating system to at least do the essentials, at least do the basics of my job.
That's a really interesting thing you say, Eric, because one of the things that we do here is that people say it's given me confidence. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, is that you can sometimes have that imposter syndrome. You can sometimes wonder, okay, I've just been confronted by something that's a little bit out there or whatever. Do I even know what I'm doing? And I think having Red Hat say, look, we do think you know what you're doing. Doesn't mean you know everything, but we do think, your organization is in capable hands with you being in the picture. And, another thing that we hear a lot from people who come through the program, a lot of people come through the program to challenge themselves. That actually saying, okay, I hear about, the Red Hat certification program. I'm going to try to do this. I want to try to do this because, I want to challenge myself. And this is what we hear in our pre-exam surveys over and over again.
Very cool. So Henry, a question for you. Can you go over an overview of like the different levels of certifications that Red Hat offers? And are these only focused on RHEL? Do they cover other products? Can you just kind of give an overview of that?
No, actually, our certifications cover a wide range of our products. We don't certify on every one of our products, but we do survey on a large number of them. We currently have approximately 40 plus certifications, and these range across a number of number of our products that are associated with RHEL. We have a pretty extensive portfolio of exams that cover OpenShift, and then we've got a pretty extensive portfolio of exams that cover some of our developer technologies, things in the middleware space and the application development space. So if there's a niche that you focus on, we've probably got certifications that will cover that niche. Yeah, they're very wide ranging. We've got what I would consider a couple of base level certifications. One of those would be the Red Hat Certified System Administrator, and then another one. It's a newer certification. Is Red Hat Certified Specialist in Containers, and the Red Hat Certified System Administrator. I would sort of view that as an entry point into our certifications that cover the realm of systems administration. If you want to take more of a developer focus, then the certified specialist in containers would be a good entry point into the certification world. But yeah, we have quite a few certifications.
So looking at Red Hat Enterprise Linux specifically, you mentioned the RHCSA, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. So
Yes.
let's talk through the progression of I've got my RHCSA, I know the basics. Where do I go from here?
If you got your RHCSA, the next exam from there that I would recommend would be the Red Hat Certified Engineer. That builds on some of the knowledge and skills that you certify on in the Red Hat Certified System Administrator exam, but it's a somewhat different focus, and we actually made a change to the program a number of years ago. We took a big step that was not without some controversy, where we sort of looked at trends and we said, you know what, because the RHCE was actually the very first exam that we ever had. It was the exam that we started the program out with, and we had kept the RHCE in sort of its original form with some modifications over the years. But we said, you know what, being a certified system engineer is more about managing systems at scale and less about in-depth knowledge of sort of traditional suite of Unix Linux services, things like email and web servers. And so we changed the RHCE. We changed that to be an Ansible exam. So the Red Hat Certified System Administrator exam, that covers core skills required to administer a system. And then the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam, we test your ability to do systems administration using Ansible. So it builds on the same technologies that you learn about in the system administrator exam, but you're automating those, and you're demonstrating the ability to manage a large number of systems efficiently.
Yeah, so the automation piece was, in fact, a really, really big and significant change for us that cannot be emphasized enough, because I think scale has become the critical question there, right? And and there's been an evolution over the years, because when I first started using the predecessor to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Red Hat Linux, uh, it was not uncommon to have multi-user systems, and you were using these terminal-based applications on these multi-user systems and all sorts of other things that's not really how it's used today. It's a pretty far cry. Or even when we go back to the early days when Henry and I were with Red Hat, and it was very much around what we used to call the edge of network, not to be confused with the way we use edge today, but these sort of commodity services that Henry was talking about, things like web, email, file, print, all of those things. Those were a big thing. But we have evolved over the years because Red Hat Enterprise Linux was brought forward as not just the thing that you put out there to run your web server, but the thing that you are going to run your mission critical applications on, your really expensive enterprise applications. That was where we went, and we did go there. Now, we continue to maintain a presence with these other things, but I think, the evolution was naturally from sort of that, edge of the network, old style edge of the network, to enterprise host, to, virtualization, to cloud, to now the current state where it's still the base of all these things, right? But it's not what it once was in terms of necessarily the things that you need to be able to pick apart or understand or deal with. And I think now being able to automate it becomes that much bigger and more important piece of it.
Right.
In fact, we had a question from Aaron about if the RHCE has gotten easier over the years, and well, I feel that's a little bit of a loaded question, but I mean, to my experience, I took the RHCE when I got my RHCSA. There's a fast track course at the time that allowed you to take RHCSA and RHCE in the same week. And I decided that I hated myself and tried it. I got my RHCSA with flying colors. I missed my RHCE, Henry, by 2 points, and I'm still bitter about that. But but I'm actually doing my RHCE prep on RHEL 9 right now, and in my current role, I do a lot more with Ansible and trying to automate tasks, whether it's my home lab or for demos. So I guess in that regard, maybe the RHCE has gotten easier than standing up an email server or tying into an identity provider, or maybe RHEL 9 is just better than RHEL 6 or RHEL 7 was.
The trouble with a categorization like easy is easy, like many other things, is in the eye of the beholder. And what you or I might categorize as easy, somebody else might categorize as extremely difficult, and vice versa, right? So I don't know that it's gotten easier. It's I think in some ways it's more challenging, but it's a different set of challenges.
I like to go with the different set of challenges because here's the thing. I always say this, I've said it many times. We don't ever set out to make something easy or hard. That's never the effort. We want something to be meaningful and useful and applicable, right? But here's kind of the thing that came across my mind as I was watching the discussion about, is it more easy, is it more difficult? Is that in some senses, some things have become more easy in the technology itself. If I think, again, back to the distant past, you had to really kind of know what you were doing in terms of setting up your monitor if you were going to use X Windows, because if you didn't do it right, you would burn the monitor out, And then, I think back to, we used to do some troubleshooting things in the exam. And darn if we didn't have this problem over time where we would lose the troubleshooting task that we would test people on because it was literally no longer a thing. Okay. We used to make people FSCK their file system, right? Except then we went to a journaling file system and that just became a done thing, And, I mentioned X. We used to break X, and it's like, okay, you gotta get X working again. Darn it, the next release of RHEL comes out. It's just, you can't break it. It just figures it out on its own, and that's a great thing. But in that sort of same time, and some of these things that come along, it's like, oh, but now SE Linux is in the picture. Okay, now you need to know that. oh, logical volumes are in the picture. Oh, you need to do that. And so it's this interesting kind of interplay between the things that get easier and easier, but then there's more capability and features which give you more things that you might need to know.
Yeah, from my perspective, I've taken a lot of Red Hat exams over the years, and I don't think I've ever had one where I would consider it easy. There's always challenging parts, and it's always a personal challenge to go through these. So, one thing I think we need to cover is, I've also taken a lot of other certification exams from other vendors, and in general, those are generally multiple choice type exams. Red Hat has, decided to go down a much different route where all our exams are, hands-on, real-world scenarios. Can one of you guys talk about, why is that important, and why have we made that decision?
Randy, do you want to take that, or I have my take on things?
Have at it, sir, and then I'll correct you as needed.
Why that's important? Well, we see that as one of the things that really sets us apart from other testing programs. And the thing about a performance-based exam is you really need to know you really need to know what you're doing in order to succeed on the exam. I guess to another way to answer that question would be, if you were going to get in the car with somebody to drive you across town, would you prefer that person had gotten their driver's license by actually going out on the street and demonstrating to someone that they knew how to safely operate the vehicle, or that person had sat at a desk and answered a series of multiple choice questions on what it means to operate a car? And I think I know which one I would pick, and I think it's the same way for testing whether somebody is proficient with a given technology. The best way to
I think we lost Aaron.
Well,
or I think we lost Henry.
I think I will continue in his place while he unfreezes. Is that the convention is to ask questions about doing something as opposed to doing something. So something is lost in that process, in a sense. One of the things that I sometimes say about conventional multiple choice testing is that if you think about it, you have the question itself called the STEM in testing world. And then you tend to have maybe 4 alternatives. And one of them is the right answer. Maybe the other 3 or 4 are what are called distractors, okay, in the world of testing. Well, what that means effectively is that if somebody's creating a multiple choice item, 80% of their time is spent on things that are not real. So, or are not accurate, or are not the thing that you're actually trying to discover. And so I just feel like there's a certain efficiency and elegance to saying, just go do it, and we don't say that you have to do it a certain way. That's the other thing that's, I think, really important to understand about how we do the exams, is that we are actually very, very agnostic in terms of process. I've often said that, look, if you want, if we say go configure a web server to run on port 80, if you want to break out Python and write your own script to open the port and listen and do a well-managed HTTP connection, be our guest. It is a timed exam. Might not be the most efficient solution, but truly, if you were to do that, it would actually work, because it's not, oh, you had to do it the way you said as opposed to the way I want to do it. Well, no, we're pretty wide open in terms of you do it the way you think makes sense.
So another thing I wanted to cover too as well is, like, what are the different ways, Randy, that people can take the exams? Like, are there options for remote exams, in person? How does all that work?
Yeah, so we started by simply having classroom exams. Okay, that was something that we just got started. It was very closely tied to training activities. Yeah, we did what Eric mentioned, this sort of thing where it's like you get thrown thrown into the deep end for 4 days, and then somehow on the fifth day, you know what you're doing. And that we still deliver exams that way. In some markets more than others, with some audiences more than others. But since then, the next thing that we started doing was actually doing more of a testing center approach. Although we weren't really working so much with one of the big established vendors, instead we actually built our own network and worked with a third party that did remote proctoring, which at the time we did it was pretty out there stuff. Remote proctoring, what's that? But we worked with a small startup, and we started actually building out our own testing center network. And that's something that served us well for a while. And then in 2020, we had concluded we needed to scale a whole lot more. And so we had this notion that, okay, this is the year that we're actually going to come up with a remote exam delivery approach. Well, some other things happened in 2022 that just happened to make that the right time to do it. It just made it orders of magnitude more urgent for the program. And so in 2020, we actually, had our, all hands on deck, big project to build out a remote delivery capability, which we launched in August of that year. And, it's become a very, very popular way for taking exams. But I always stress to people that it's kind of important to have more than one option, right? So, for example, with the remote option, if you have a tidy space in your living area that's quiet and free from pets, kids, significant others, that might be fine. If you are living somewhere where that might not be the case, and living arrangements, when we look at the entire planet, they can be very intergenerational. There can be a lot of people in there. Just the challenge of a clean desk. See, right now you can't see the squalor that is about me. There are so many things that would maybe make that not ideal for some people, because we need to have a controlled environment to deliver that remote exam. So having the testing center option is really, really important. And being able to choose among them, is important. And as I mentioned, we still do a lot of classroom exams in some emerging markets where there's certain economies of scale and convenience and everything else that make them make sense there. So I think the thing that really differentiates us is that we're very much about giving multiple options as opposed to here's the one size, take it.
So as I understand it, there's actually a preliminary exam, something that a person could go through, learn a few things, and then take a more or less a practice test.
It's somewhere north of a practice test and south of a certification exam. And so we have one that the code is PE 124, and it aligns to our System Administration 1 course. Okay. And so you're about halfway through the learning content we associate with what you need to become a Red Hat certified system administrator. Now, I'm very reluctant to tell somebody after they've gone halfway that, okay, and you're now ready to be a system administrator, because it goes back to that sense of assurance that we want organizations to have about the person they're hiring. You are definitely somebody who is on track to become that Red Hat certified system administrator. You certainly have skills that are worth acknowledging. And so what we've done is we have the concept of a preliminary exam where, for a much lower cost and a much shorter exam, you can go and take an exam that's hands-on, just like we do with our certification exams. It's not going to confer a certification, but it'll show up on our verify page as something that you have achieved. It gives you a sense of whether you are on track to maybe continue learning and earn RHCSA. And I think it's just a good way for people to get that measure of where they are. And, beyond that, we all hear about the skills gap. We all hear about how employers are struggling to find capable people. And the reality of that is there's probably a lot of employers out there who would say, okay, look, here's this guy or gal who might not, Red Hat isn't calling them Red Hat certified, but they have passed this hands-on exam. That might be somebody that I can bring into my organization because I am looking for capable people. And that person has shown that they are on the road to being that more fully formed Red Hat system administrator. So I think it's an important offering.
Yeah, we had a question come up too. I think it's pretty relevant here. How do you know when you're ready to take an exam? Can you cover that and then maybe talk about the retake policy as well as part of that?
Yeah. So look, this is a great question and a profound one even. And so I would give a couple of pieces of guidance. If you are actually taking Red Hat training, the training that we offer, and it's offered through different means and mechanisms and so on. If you're taking that, my answer to you is be able to do all of those hands-on labs without looking at any prompts, without going back in the pages to see something, without looking at the suggested solutions. Just if you can go through and do those, and that's not to say never look at a doc, but I'm saying don't look at solutions, don't look at the learning content. If there's certain things that are so obscure that you need to look at a man page, be familiar with that man command, right? Do some of those things and make the most out of what you're doing with training. Now, the thing is, we don't require people to train with us. This has been a philosophy from day one. And if you are somebody who is doing self-study, go to the web under the exam that you are studying for, and we have our exam objectives there. We lay it out there. We just say, look, this is what you need to know. And we're pretty transparent and pretty comprehensive about it. And so that's where you start to have to come up with your own measure of, am I really able to do that thing? And it takes a great deal of sort of self-awareness and honesty because we have that tendency to go, yeah, I got that. No, make yourself do something that proves that you can do it.
And if you do take the test and fail, how does the retake policy work? And do the retakes cost money?
Well, this is something I'm very excited about that we've introduced earlier this year, is that now if you take a Red Hat certification exam and you don't pass it on your first attempt, you can retake it in a second attempt with no additional charge. In other words, now when you purchase an exam a la carte, that purchase effectively is one first attempt and a conditional second attempt if you're not successful in the first. And you have to not be successful in the first. We have some people who are really type A who is like, boy, no, I've got to take it again because I didn't achieve 100. And, sorry, folks, you don't get the retake to it, for that. But if you did miss the mark the first time out, you do get a retake. It's on us. It's part of the price of your exam. If you're a Red Hat Learning subscription subscriber, we're basically doing the same things. Standard edition or higher, I should say. You get 5 first attempts and 5 conditional attempts. 5 different exams, 5 conditional retakes.
So you mentioned the learning subscription. Let's double click on that and explain what is the learning subscription.
Well, the learning subscription is we've had a big trend in the industry to more and more self-paced and online learning and video learning and things like that. The Red Hat Learning subscription is basically a bundle of all of our self-paced learning offerings. Okay, that's what's at the core of the subscription. So it's pretty much the case that anything that we have a self-paced offering that's sort of static content. We very often will actually have a self-paced video offering. If there's a self-paced offering, it's available there in that subscription. We have some different tiers which give you some additional things. And so I mentioned Red Hat Standard Edition, which gives you a set of exams to be able to take. Standard Edition gives you something that allows you to contact somebody for some help and support with concepts. Think of it as like instructor hours, right? And then we also actually have a tier where we also have, virtual training, which is live, right? That you have people on a camera like we're on here right now, and they are going through the class synchronously. We offer these as well, and we have a tier of that Red Hat Learning subscription that allows access to that as well. So it's really just mostly a bundle of those self-paced offerings, but then there are some additional things that you can get that are actually priced very effectively, as incrementally relative to what you're getting.
Yeah, and I would add, like, if anybody watching who has an aspiration of getting like the Red Hat Certified Architect certification, which is the highest certification level, this learning subscription can be an amazing resource to help you get all, because you have to have 5 different additional certifications beyond the RHCE, and this learning subscription can provide you all of that great learning content that you need. And then if you have that higher level, you also get the exams on top of that. So it can be a really, really good way to move towards the RHCA if people are interested in that.
Right. Well, see, the thing is it's kind of an interesting thing, because with Red Hat Certified Architect, RHCA, it's a really good way to prepare for it is to have the subscription, because you're committed into needing that much content, and it's just much more price effective, and it's much more convenient in every possible way. But then there's a flip side to that. If you earn Red Hat Certified Architect, you are now eligible for a 50% discount on that Red Hat Learning subscription, whatever tier you're at. And that's, an expression of A, appreciation for people digging in and doing all that work. And B, quite honestly, it is very much in Red Hat's interest to keep our Red Hat Certified Architects involved, looking at new things, trying new things, because that's who tends to go for that, is the curious, the experimenters, I'm kind of wanting to learn more about this other thing that I haven't used. And they tend to be the people who then in a meeting at work go, have we considered trying X, right? And so it works out very well. It's a big hill to climb, but we do have a reward for it at the end of the day.
So one of the things that came up a little earlier in the episode was how long are certifications good for? Are they good for a year? Are they good for the life of a release? And let's start with the RHCSA and the RHCE. RHCA is a little bit different.
Yeah, so it's there's a saying: if you're explaining, you're losing. And so I'm about to go lose. The default period for certifications is 3 years. Okay. And, once upon a time we used to peg it to releases, but that actually was probably not the right way to go in some ways. And so we started doing something time delimited, and, the various standards around certification and testing say you should have some period. And we thought, 3 years is a pretty good round figure for how long somebody might retain knowledge if they, depending on how much they use it, right? We don't know. We don't know if you earn that cert and then you proceeded to use RHEL every single minute of your waking life, or whether it's something you did and you never touched it again. So, we've got that 3 years. But the thing is one of the things we want to do is not take things away from people that they've earned if we can avoid it. And so let's say you earn Red Hat Certified System Administrator. You get 3 years. But then you start saying, look, I'm seeing that automation is really critical. I need to know automation. I need to learn Ansible. So you go learn that. You earn your Red Hat Certified Engineer. Well, that's got 3 years, but it pulls your RHCSA along to where we're going to say that your RHCSA is good for as long as your RHC was good. Because look, we got a sense of what you know. You refreshed our knowledge about you as a technical professional, right? And so we have some things like that where it's really possible to extend it, based on earning additional certifications, because you're always giving us some refreshed and more recent information about your engagement and your knowledge. So 3 years the default, a little bit more complicated when you get into the details.
So we talked a little bit about like how do you know when you're ready to take the exam, but for just more in general, like like what are your tips on like how to pass an exam in general? Like what are the kind of the steps you can take to make sure you're on solid ground and you're doing the right things to prepare for an exam?
I think Randy's advice about if you are working through the course, making sure you can do the labs without referring back is a good sign that you're probably close to being ready. Um, there are some strategies you can employ when you're actually taking the exam, and we have some materials on our website with tips and tricks around things that you can do to improve your chances for success. I'll share a couple of those with you, and some of these are based on observations of where people do go wrong on our exams. And the first one is take your time when you're in the exam. Uh, there's this tendency because the exam is timed, and I think folks think I've got to dive in and start working right away. Take a few minutes, read through all of the content on the exam. There's all of our exams. There's usually a general set of instructions that you should read before the exam that have information about the exam. Some people skip those. We can, when we observe people taking the exam, some people just dive right into the tasks themselves, and that's not necessarily the best way to go. So take your time and read things carefully. Detail is important. Again, read things carefully. Sometimes people miss things because they make simple typographic mistakes, and we hate to see people do that to themselves. Just taking your time, reading things carefully, checking your work. Those are all things that you can do to improve your chances. On top of adequate preparation.
Well, so I'm glad you mentioned the in-exam piece, Henry, because I think there are some important things there. And, you mentioned check your work. And so one of the things that I would say is part of your prep and then that you take into the exam is what does working actually look like? Okay, if I have created a logical volume, what does that look like? What would be a way that would tell me that, yes, I have actually created this successfully, right? I think that's really important, is having a sense of how to check your work, because, we hear from people sometimes who swear up and down, I got everything working. Well, look, the reality is we have all of these snapshots and virtual instances. We can stand up environments, and it's seldom ever the case that somebody got something working that we said was not working. But for some reason, they thought it was working, right? And so knowing what it means to check your work is really important. But the thing is, I'd say that's kind of part of the job too, right? If you're somebody who is a system engineer working on RHEL, and you're not good about checking your work, or you don't have a good sense of what checking your work should entail and involve, that's going to have an impact on the organization that you're working for, because you're going to do stuff wrong and spend more time fixing the wrong thing that you did or not succeeding with what you're trying to do. So checking the work, that Henry mentioned, really important. And along those lines, look, we put everything in bullets. Look at every one of those bullets and say, did I get that bullet? Did I do it or not? Because if we say we have a task, an overarching task that's a bullet, and then it's got 3 sub-bullets, we're kind of telling you, these are the 3 things we're looking for. Maybe you should make sure that they're there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one other tip I'll throw out that I've run up against is if you look at the objectives, most of them will say at the bottom, configurations must persist after a reboot without intervention. So, just you have to keep that in mind with a lot of these exams. That is one of the requirements, and just because you got it working doesn't mean it's going to survive a reboot. So.
Yeah, and that'll bite you more often than not. Is before you click submit, reboot your system, double check your work. Um, so to add on to our list of tips, and there are chapter markers in the show notes once the live stream's over. So come back to this section as you prepare for your exam, and see if you've followed these examples. And because it is timed, something that I would highly recommend is read through the entire list and knock out the things that you're very comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with SE Linux, but you're really good with disk operations, knock out everything. Go create your LVMs. Make sure that when you reboot, that logical volume gets mounted. Make sure it gets mounted with the right options. Knock out the stuff that you know for sure before you dive into the things that you're not so sure. Things that you have to go in and read the man pages. Things that you're going to beat your head against the keyboard to try and get it working. Save those for last. You've got what, 3 hours, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in
3 or
there.
4.
Yeah. There's one museum. But you're exactly right. And you know, the thing is that I think a lot around technical professionals, we sometimes can almost be sort of lured into the thing that's the hardest and say, boy, I'm going to do that one first. No, do exactly what you said. Knock out the things that you're like, okay, I know how to do that. Bang, 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 you know?
Yes, avoid fixating on the thing that is stymieing you, and move on and knock out any low hanging fruit you can, and then come back to the things that are more challenging. There was a
And
question
actually,
about.
let me hold on to the question, but also,
Yes.
I think you'll agree with me, Henry. Don't make things harder than they are. Okay.
Yes.
Wait, I should use the HTTPD package instead of writing a Python script that checks for port 80.
Well, Aaron actually put a good command line in the chat there, which would work. Except bear in mind that we are also going to reboot your instances, and so you now need to have a way to make that script persistent. But yeah, look, don't second guess us too much about about what we're asking for. What we're asking for is really what we said, and not a trick. We don't do trick questions. None of what we're doing is to lure you into a minefield from which you cannot escape. Okay, just trust me, we're not smart enough to do that.
So
Nearly close.
I have to somebody here, Shantanu. I like your comment. LVM is very confusing in the beginning, and then one day it isn't confusing anymore.
Based on true
And I
events.
based on and that's exactly I I've been through that journey. I remember the first time I encountered LVM. I was thinking, what is this? And we won't go exactly how far back this was, but it involved me looking through paper manuals and reading and trying to wrap my head around this. And then at some point the light came on, and now it's just like, well, you don't even have to almost think about it. But a lot of the things that you deal with in our world are like that. You have that moment when the light switch flips on, and then suddenly understanding happens. But getting back to the question about, as Randy said, don't make things more difficult. The way we phrase the task on the exams, we're usually telling you, here's what we want this to look like. We want you to install a web server and make it work like this. So when you're reading the task, keep in mind that the thing we're describing is what what the what the service that you're setting up, or the script that you're writing, or the playbook that you're creating, whatever it is. This is how it should work when you're done. But the other question I was going to address earlier is somebody asked, what resources do we provide during the exam? Well, of course, you have man pages, the info pages. We usually make product documentation available for the relevant product documentation. So if the exam is covering OpenShift, you'll have OpenShift documentation available. You don't have Google, so don't rely too much on Google. or any of your favorite sites on Google that you might rely on for advice.
So no
but another
don't have social media.
another bit of advice though I will offer. So don't try to memorize every tedious bit of syntax for any command. Strategy that I employ is knowing that the documentation and the man pages are going to be on the exam. If there's some command that's really hairy, um, what I memorize is, I don't memorize the command. I memorize which document it's in or which man page I need to look at, and I make sure I understand. Man pages can be a little cryptic sometimes, so I'll make sure I experiment enough with the command that I can actually interpret what the man page is telling me. And I don't try to memorize the details that are too numerous to to memorize. What I try to memorize is, where can I go to look up those details if I should need to know them in a particular situation.
Well, and
yeah, Scott McBrien says ice scuzzy Adam is a perfect example.
Yeah, man pages with examples, one of the best ways to take the exam. Get very, very comfortable with the man command, and get used to the keyboard shortcut that drops you all the way to the bottom. So, because that's usually where the examples are, and that's
Right.
really, really helpful. Something that I'm surprised Brian hasn't brought up is that it's not just command line. I use the web console very heavily when I took my RHCSA, when I renewed my RHCSA on RHEL 8. So hint, hint, if you struggle with LVM, use the web console.
If it's available, and if it's not available, well, you're the system administrator and you can make
it
that
available.
happen.
Yep.
Yes. So and actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Eric. One of the other key differentiators between a performance-based exam and and other sorts of exams is, we don't really care how you solve the task that we've asked you to solve. We don't, as long as you do your own work, we don't really care if you crank up your favorite GUI tool to do the task, or if you do it from the command line. If you drop into assembly and do it that way, it really doesn't matter, as long as the thing that we've asked you to, the artifact that we've asked you to leave us works in the manner that we expect it to work. As Eric said earlier, if you want to use the Python, HTTPD module to create a web server, as long as the web server performs, according to how we specified, we don't really care whether it's one you wrote or it's Apache or Nginx or what have you.
So we could go on and on all day about tips and tricks. I think I'll call out one of the comments earlier was HomeLab. HomeLab is a huge resource. In fact, that's when I stood up my first home Red Hat server was to prepare for my RHCSA. So I will defer other tips and tricks if you've got them, or if you have anecdotes about trying to take the RHCSA or other Red Hat exams, put them in the comments. Maybe we'll try and compile them, or maybe we'll have a follow-up episode. One thing that I'm wanting to do with this show and RHEL Livestream in general is to create a community of sysadmins helping other sysadmins. I haven't really figured out what that looks like or how to go about that. So if you're in the audience and you have ideas, let me know, whether it's Discord, a discourse forum, or just we hang out here every other Wednesday. Haven't really thought that through yet, but to that point, Randy, I think I'll throw this one to you. There's actually a Red Hat Learning community, which was one of the advantages to having the Red Hat Learning subscription. Can you talk a little bit about that? It feels like a community of people that would have the answers to a lot of these questions.
Right. Well, yeah, the Red Hat Learning community is something that we launched some years ago based on studies that found that adults, we're mostly talking about adults, learn really by working with others, right? By having that interaction and so on, and not necessarily just being lectured to, right? And so the Red Hat learning community was an idea of how do we provide that, especially given how much the industry is moving away from sort of the in-person training experience to more self-paced or virtual training experiences. How can we still get people learning together and having better outcomes? And so, learn.redhat.com. Is that the right URL? I hope.
I think so.
See, autocomplete makes me dumb. It's like, it's a community that you can join. You can join it for free. You'll be shocked to hear that to reach the full, usage of all of its features and capabilities, you might actually have to purchase some training from Red Hat or one of our fine learning partners. But it is a great place to go and get a sense of community as you're developing your skills and on your journey. And even if you're far into your journey, because I can tell you there are people in that community who have been doing this for a long time and know an awful lot, and they just like being a resource. We all have our pleasures, and for some people they just like being able to be that person who can answer that question. So you'll find those people and others who are looking for answers to their questions there. It's a really good resource, and the community has grown in size quite a bit now. It's you have to really hit that that sort of volume and participation where things really start to work, because Henry will remember we tried something like this years and years and years ago. We never quite got the volumes going, but really the Red Hat learning community, really good thing to check out.
All right, and one last question, Henry. I'll throw this to you to start, and then Randy, if you want to follow up. What's coming for the future of RHEL certifications? Anything on the roadmap? Any exciting new changes?
Exciting new changes. Well, something I personally am excited about is we are going to sometime here. I can't promise exactly when, but we're going to release a brand new certification around Ansible. And the thing I'm particularly excited about with this certification is it's going to be using Ansible to manage Windows systems, and we're
Windows
finally,
what are those?
that one of those other operating systems that I've heard
Henry,
of.
read the room.
Popular in some places, but no, that other operating system does exist, and there are a number of benighted individuals who insist on using it, and
No,
I see this.
I jest, but in all reality, I don't. There's only a couple of jobs that I had where I was strictly a Linux systems administrator. I was usually the Linux sysadmin and if I could automate all my Linux systems and then automate that other operating system with the same tool, so much the better. So I jest, but I think having a Windows Ansible course would be really helpful, especially for a lot of Linux sysadmins that, if they're like me, don't even know how to reboot a Windows server anymore.
I'm excited. I'm excited about it because I think it might be a way to invite folks in that world over to, a happier place, and give them a glimpse of how life can be in other corners of the world, and maybe make some inroads into for folks who maybe would not otherwise have an opportunity to look at Linux. So that's coming. Again, I don't
Henry, I think we've had maybe a refresher or two and more coming on the way for some of the things that we have in the catalog. Let's see, identity management.
Yes,
identity management is that's set to roll out here end of the month. we're coming up with we have a Ansible, using Ansible to manage network devices, things like routers and so on and so forth. We've got an update for that exam that will be coming out here probably November-ish, October, November-ish. We are updating some of our OpenShift offerings. We've got an update for the OpenShift application developer certification, Red Hat certified specialist in OpenShift application development, that will be rolling out here soon. We're actually making kind of a significant change around the OpenShift product line itself. We're actually it's an existing certification, but we've actually changed the name of the certification. Can I mention this, Randy? Is this already a thing?
No, this has already been in effect.
Yeah, yeah. So in sort of acknowledgement of the criticality of OpenShift to Red Hat, and Red Hat's future, we've actually rebranded our OpenShift sort of entry-level OpenShift administration exam. That is, the Red Hat certified specialist in OpenShift administration. But I'm sort of straying far afield from RHEL. In terms of RHEL, the identity management, we're probably going to be looking at updating our troubleshooting exam, and then after that, I was forgetting another critical exam. We're also going to be releasing an update of our Linux security exam and course. That's coming up here probably as well, sometime Q4ish, sometime October timeframe, I'm guessing. So lots of refreshes on the way.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. And as we wrap up, a couple last minute tips. If you're looking at doing perhaps your RHCSA, a great resource might be lab.redhat.com. There are a number of RHEL Instruct based labs. So you've got your code on one side, you've got the terminal on the other. There is a sysadmin basics series of labs that you can search through, some admin 101s that talk about LVM, that talk about creating users and managing groups. So our self-paced labs are open. They are free to use, and they're like 10 to 15 minutes. Go in, learn how to do a task. So lab.redhat.com is an amazing resource. And Brian, if I don't say so if I do say so myself, I would think that the RHEL YouTube channel might be a great place to learn the ins and outs of being a sysadmin as well. As much as I would like to point them to this show, I got to call out our other show, Into the Terminal. We talk about, we're in the terminal, forgive the pun, every Friday around noon Eastern. So check out Into the Terminal to learn how to do things on your RHEL systems. Great way to prepare for Linux exams. And of course, catch this show every other Wednesday. We've got a huge lineup of content coming. John Spinks and I are just about in the middle of a Red Hat Insights modernizing RHEL management mini-series. We just dropped episode 3 yesterday, talking about patch monitoring on the hybrid cloud console. And then this Friday on Into the Terminal, I mentioned we've been doing a packaging story arc on Into the Terminal. So we'll be wrapping that one up with a troubleshooting containers episode. So when things go wrong in your container, how do you fix those things? And then, of course, join this show every other Wednesday. Really excited because Brian and I were just looking over the schedule earlier today, and we've got a lot of awesome episodes like converting to RHEL on AWS. We've got a Podman episode, identity management beginning of September. About the only episode we don't have planned out is the next one. So we're currently in search of a guest and a topic for week after next. But join us every other Wednesday here. Really excited. And Brian, thank you for joining me every week, every Actually, we talk about this show every week because off weeks we have a planning episode or planning meeting. But really glad to have you as my co-host, Henry, Randy. Thank you all very much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on, talking about a topic. I have not seen the chat this alive in weeks, so we definitely hit a spot of interest to our audience. So thank you both for your time. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thanks so much.
Very glad to be here.
Awesome. So on behalf of Randy and Henry from the learning team and my co-host Brian and the entire Red Hat Enterprise Linux crew, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again on Friday. Take care.
Adios.